situation that everybody on this little clock app is feeling a little triggered by. If you can't find her here, go wherever you need to go to find her, because I ain't got a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it at all. It doesn't trigger me. You should start with age. I hear Asian women are kind of, then again, I'm a little biased. I don't have a problem with it at all, because you know what? It is kind of rough out here in these American streets. Yes, I am a very modern woman. I like nice things. I am a go-getter. I like to hustle and I like to make money. But I have a very traditional mindset, and that's because of how I was raised. I was raised to be feminine. I was raised to be a wife. I was raised to be a mother, and I was raised to be submissive. And I am okay with being submissive, but I'm submissive to my emperor because I am an empress. See, I don't have a problem with that. If he's going to lead me, I'm going to let him lead, and I will follow him, because I'm not going to let him fall. I'm not going to let him trip. That's the kind of woman I am. So I don't have no issues with the men going overseas to get that, because that's the kind of woman that we need to be. I try to be very, very humble, because what God gives you, he can take at any moment in time. But the one thing that I am very cocky about is who I am as a woman. I'm very, very cocky when it comes to how I treat a man. Yes, I am. Because I will tell you straight up, I am the table, because I know what I bring. I know my worth. I know what kind of...
Okay, all right. So shout out to Brazil Yesh for this one. Fair use. Let's listen to what this lady said and break it down a little bit. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. As always, hit the share button, because the message is more important than the messenger. What this lady is saying pretty much is that she doesn't mean any harm, but she's been trained to do two things. She's been trained to be a modern woman and a traditionalist. So she's a go-getter, but she's not going to go out and get the man she wants. And since she's not going to do that, and she is the table, but she can't fully tell you why, except how she treats a man, which is not good enough. When a man tells you what he brings to the table, how he treats you, the ladies don't care. As we know, the women need him to do, be, and have certain things that are beyond his control included. And so they don't care how he treats women unless he does, and has all the things that they want him to be, do, and have without them being even under his control. He must be a certain height, which is not within his control. He must have a certain amount of money, which is halfway within his control. And he must do certain things that may or may not be within a man's power. You can't say I treat you well. If that's all you can bring to the table as a man, they look at you and say, then that's because you're an inferior man. So I'm going to apply that to her too. Not because I hate her. I think she means well. A lot of this stuff is subconscious. But she's not as critical an analyst and as in-depth an analyst when it comes down to herself. I am the table because I know what I bring to the table. That's a circular argument. How I treat a man, that's not sufficient. What's your breast size, ma'am? What's your butt size? And we're not as picky about that as you are about a man's abs, his junk, his wallet, things like that. But what I'm saying is, even though this lady, and I saw her, is cute, there still has to be something else we got to look at. And that's going to be, what do you look like? Where are your insecurities about your looks? Because if you got plenty of them, then how you treat us is only because of your insecurities, or actually because of your looks themselves, justifying your insecurities. Gentlemen, you must understand that women like her who don't mean harm and who tell you we agree with passport brothers still need to be understood as the minimum reason you not only are okay getting a passport in her eyes, but the minimum reason you should get them, and you should not entertain Western women. She may not mean harm. Her problems are subconscious. Nonetheless, you must understand this. You can be nice to someone like her and still understand that she's the bare minimum as to why you should not entertain Western women, and you should entertain women that require you to have a passport to get the cuss word out the West. I'm not going to play the rest. Thank you, Brazil Yesh, for putting her up. She's an empress. That right there is the problem. She's a go-getter. I know this woman does not go and get her men that she likes. I can look at her and tell that. But she's a go-getter though. That's problematic enough. Secondly, she's an empress, so he's got to be an emperor. Oh, she done really took it past princess and queen. This is a non-black woman speaking from what I can tell. This woman had the gall, had the nerve to sit up and say she's an empress. Then she'll submit when she finds her emperor. Okay, listen, the best thing for her to say is she's not going to just be with anybody, and that's fine. What she's got to start saying as well, though, is I'm entitled. And I can't shake that because I was still raised in the West. That's what she's got to understand. I'm entitled. She needs to admit that this is how she was trained and she can't untrain herself. Subconsciously, she's aware, but she needs to admit this to herself because, see, the decency she has left is the decency to admit that men should get passports, that it's okay for them to do it. What you need to understand is that a woman that is Western but still is good enough for you is the one that understands you should get passports and bypass Western women. And if she really wants to be good enough for one of you gentlemen from the West, she will get a passport herself, migrate to a traditional area, and learn how to be a traditional woman. Whether she's got a PhD or a GED, that's what she'll do. You want to know which Western women are good enough for you? They're not going to stay in the West either. How about them apples? Next, let me let you hear this other woman. This is also on Brazil Yesha's website. I'm going to let y'all listen to this other broad right quick. And I'm going to tell you psychologically why she said what she said.
You don't think women in the international community don't see you all spouting this bullshit? That y'all can just go to other countries because they'll be so happy to have you? Women feel this way all over the world, okay? And yeah, they'll come, they'll fuck you real good. You'll marry them, bring them back, and they'll stay with you for the required time. And then they're gonna dump your ass because they know why you came to get them. Keep on passport, brother.
Just the evil behind their words.
Fair use. So yeah, just the evil behind their words. And that's why I let you hear him say this. I'm going to name what that evil is. That's projection. This woman cannot understand why it is that traditionally raised women would appreciate a man and treat him well. And she also slipped something in. Yeah, we feel this way all over the world. If she has not traveled, she doesn't know what she's talking about. If she has traveled, then the question is, what did she do when she was traveling? Because if she traveled and she slept with somebody outside of the borders of the nation in which she lives, and she didn't stay in that nation, and she didn't bring that man back with her, she traveled for some ding-a-ling. Because she could. That's what that means. So she really doesn't have a way to win this argument either way. Now, she's talking about you passport brothers. She tried to slip something in there. Yeah, when you bring her back, see, we know that we're not planning on bringing them back. We understand that. What I want you brothers to keep in mind, though, is that while we understand that we ain't bringing them back, we know that. They're hoping you don't realize the importance of not bringing them back. She's hoping that she can appeal to those of you that are still living in the States or other areas, other nations of the West, because you know those nations. So it's easy to plan and imagine your future in that system because you're familiar with it. It's hard to plan it in a system that you haven't lived in yet. I'm sorry, in which you have not yet lived. Sorry, see, as an English professor, I should know better. I stand corrected before any of you say anything. She understands that, and she's slipping that in there. Even if she's not consciously thinking about it, that's a subconscious trick right there. See, remember before these passport movements, Passport Bros, Passport Gang, SYSBM, and the new one started by Base Muslim, SYSMB, shout out to him, Save Yourself Muslim Brother, which excludes simps and racist Muslims. They're not welcome. And SYSMB. Before these movements, hashtags, consciousnesses, awarenesses popped up, a lot of brothers from the States were looking at other women from other nations, but still living within the West. She's pretty much trying to take your mind off of what the solution is, which is you living abroad and outside of the West. Now, if you black, we should have been on that repatriation decades ago, regardless of the women, independently of women and romance and mating and bumping uglies and marriage. Hopefully all of this within a marriage. If you Muslim, religiously, you should have been on hijrah anyway. Western nations hostile to Muslims should have never been places where you would have considered settling permanently unless you had no other option. Your nation was dangerous and you could only get to one of these other nations. Or you were doing it for da'wah, or you were doing it to take over. And that's not something we about to do. Not in these times, so let's just be honest. So what reasons you have to stay there permanently? Only Muslims with an excuse for that are African-American Muslims who cannot afford to move abroad. They got an excuse. Staying in the West. And when I say African-Americans, I'm including within the other parts of the Americas. Not just the United States. Now, this being said, this is independently of the ladies. We should be looking to stay in these areas because there are nations that will treat you fairly. Think about it. There are nations where you can be treated fairly if the people don't like you, let alone if they're just as neutral to you as they are to any other foreigner. Imagine that. They do exist. We love to say, man, we got enemies everywhere. Even in Africa, they don't like us. That's not necessarily true. I done told you. Africa's complex. Depends on where you're going. People will call you the N-word thinking that's not even an insult. I'm not joking. And this is in Anglophone African nations. So we're not the most hated. We love to sit up. Yeah, man, we go to somewhere where it ain't African. We're the most loved. Well, you could do that in Africa too. It depends on which part. Southern Nigeria, they don't like anybody. Don't let some Igbo insulting you in the Yoruba language, by the way, which is the irony of ironies, make you think that all of Africa hates you. Quiet as it's kept, some of us do have some anti-black sentiment in us. That's another talk for another day. What you got to understand is that this woman here, the second one whose voice you last heard, is really trying to slip some things in so that you will not be prepared to get your country behind out of the West and stay out the West.